Welcome. I am sitting here with Darrell Pearson, Professor of Youth Ministries at Eastern University, and as you know, this month we're going to be talking all about internships and internships programs, and we're sitting down with Darrell to talk a little bit about his perspective as a field placement supervisor at Eastern. So welcome, Darrell.
Thanks.
Good to see you. So Darrell, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the youth ministry field placement program at Eastern.
Yeah, we're structured probably like most colleges do, I would think, for youth ministry internships. We have some who do summer internships. They have to do 4 credits, which sounds small, but it's actually a semester equals 1 credit.
Okay.
So they technically do 4 semesters of internship over 4-year period. So the goal would be generally, as we do at your church, someone who maybe their junior and senior year, for 4 semesters they're doing field placement. But we also have the option that some do summer settings, which are generally full-time.
Okay.
So you could do the equivalent of a year in a summer.
Okay.
So we have that. So quite a few. Of course, everybody's required to do it.
So do you have students going all across the nation, or are they pretty much local?
Boy, they're all over. I mean, every summer I have some people that are overseas doing something with a missions or organization. I've always thought that Eastern should fund my visiting everybody. Especially when a guy a few years ago was in the Bahamas.
The Bahamas.
I thought I need to go and visit.
Clearly,
see how
that
up front
should be
and face to face. Support him.
Yeah, clearly that should be part of your job.
I didn't
people in the
get any funding
Bahamas.
for that.
So, what do you see your role as a field placement supervisor? What do you do? How do you oversee your students?
Yeah, well, some of my role is to try and be enough proactive, be thinking ahead for them, because my students don't always know what they're getting into until they're into it. And a lot of the churches, because I get tons of churches that call me,
okay,
and they don't think about the students first. And this is part of why you're doing this topic, because what happens is churches, they're not thinking about, oh, how do we help a student? They're thinking, how do we help our church? And then they get the brilliant idea that, hey, there's this school with a youth ministry program. And then I think they think, well, if we get a cool college student that the students will like to work here, the student will solve all our youth ministry problems, thereby solving all our church problems. And that sounds funny. They really think this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So part of my job is to try and think ahead, to go, where are people going to be effective or not abused by a church, or what's going to fit them well, because the students don't know. They often kind of get excited about something that looks good, but I have to think ahead. So the longer I've been around, the easier that is, because I know the churches in the area,
right?
And I know how far it is from campus, or all those things. So that's my first part. The next part would be, obviously, while they're doing their internships, to be debriefing with them. Like during the school year, we have class actually every other week, which isn't much, but mainly to talk and see how people are doing. And people present a little case study generally. You remember that?
Yes.
Yourself?
Yes.
Doing a case study to kind of say, here's some ministry situation. How is it going? How did you handle it? What could be done differently? And some of that's just to help the students with each other have the peer interaction of how much more complicated a situation can be than it might look on the surface. So you bring up something, and then they all can kind of say, well, maybe what's going on is. And it helps deepen the understanding of the student who just sees a kid who hates me. Okay. And then in reality, they realize, oh yeah, that's right. There's always kids who look like they hate you, but they probably hate something else. Right. But they're taking it out on me. Right. Because I'm here and I care about them. So, it's that kind of learning.
It's like there's a little bit of competition between churches in order to get these students. And it also sounds like there's a large population of, or maybe not large, but a population of churches with unhealthy expectations.
Yes.
So what would you say are healthy expectations for a church to bringing in a college intern? What would you say?
Well, the one I alluded to a minute ago is gigantic.
Gigantic.
They think that they're going to solve their problems.
Right.
And that's not going to happen. And when they think this through, or I suggest to them to go, like whatever you do for your job outside of your church volunteer stuff, would you hire a 19-year-old without any experience to jump into your business and run things? I mean, they wouldn't. Right. But for some reason, they're willing to a church because they're kind of at the end of the rope. Like, we don't know what to do. Like, kids aren't happy, or families are leaving the church. So the unhealthy expectation is that A college student is a problem solver.
Okay.
And my students, we got great students here. They have great hearts. They want to work with kids, but they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So they get into a place, and often it's just overwhelming because the expectations, they didn't understand what that meant. And all of a sudden they're like, I have to do what? Like, I don't know how to do that. And the church is like, well, that's why you're the intern. So healthy starts when the church's position is we want to help a student.
Okay.
Be a part of what our ministry is. We're not looking for a student to solve our problem.
Right.
So the healthy church is where I want students to be. Now, not every church is, you can't say they're all healthy or not healthy.
Right.
But, healthy, for example, is often a church that has a full-time youth pastor. And, of course, that's not the ones that call me all the time. A lot of the ones that call me are the ones who go, we don't have anybody. That's why we're calling you.
We need someone to plug.
We need someone to do something, I go, well, my students need to learn from somebody. Most of my students don't really even require money. They're not looking for paid internships. Though, when you talk about things that help on the competition, as you know, this has helped. When you have a little stipend, doesn't have to be a lot, but it pays for some gas, it honors the student's time a little bit, allows them to not maybe do work study, they can focus on their internship with kids and things. So that's pretty good. But, most of the students aren't looking for a big, making $1,000 a month being a youth pastor.
Right.
They're looking for, how do I learn about this? And then, of course, they get that nice appropriate level where they're participating, they're learning. But if they're on the retreat and something goes wrong, they're not the one getting called at school.
Right.
About how could you have done such a thing? The youth pastor is going to have to do that one, but they're paid the big bucks.
Right.
So, as people who watch this would understand.
They would.
So, you can pay a lot of money to deal with those kind of things. But, you're in a place to deal with it because that's what your job is. But a college student, when they're, 20 years old or something, they're just not ready for that. And again, they don't know what they're up against until they get into it and find out, oh my gosh, I had a conversation, one of my seniors was hired as a freshman by a church.
Okay.
He came to class one day and told Duffy and I got a job. And we were like, what? Like, he just started. He was 17. And a church hired him to be a youth pastor. And then they didn't understand why it didn't go well. And the student did great. Loved the students. Students got along great. But the parents were, I'm sure they were frustrated.
Right.
And I had to have a conversation with the pastor later to go, he wasn't even doing an internship.
Right.
He's not even qualified. He didn't even have a class yet. You hired him. What were you thinking, And they were like, well, we thought he would know more. I go, how would he know more? You
He's
should have known.
Just out of high school.
Yeah, just out of high school. You should have known more what he doesn't. I like to compare it to, let's say somebody comes to me and they say, Darrell, you're a creative guy, youth pastor. We have an architectural firm. And we sometimes get stuck. We need some creative juices. And I go, what can I do? They go, we want to pay you $100,000 to be an architectural consultant. I'd probably jump at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be what I get paid, as a college pastor or as a youth pastor. Yeah. But, no, it'd be like, wow, that's great money. So let's say I get in there, and then my first day, someone walks in with a bunch of blueprints, and they go, what do you think about the structural support of this, though? And I'd be like, oh, wait a minute. I don't know anything about that stuff. Well, they'd say, well, why not? You're hired. You're you work in our firm. And I go, yeah, but you didn't tell me I'd have to know these things. I mean, I don't know architecture.
Right.
It's up to the firm to look at me and go, you can't hire him. He's a youth pastor.
Right.
He knows nothing about structural analysis. That's why he's a youth pastor. Actually, structural analysis in youth ministry, it could be some, that's a different topic. Yeah.
Destruction, I think would go along
that's what I was thinking.
With youth ministry.
Destructural analysis.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what we're into.
And it sounds like you're talking about an idea we talk a lot about at Directions in Youth Ministry, where we talk about creating learning environments for these students to come in and learn, where they're allowed to make mistakes, where they're encouraged to grow through their experiences. Right. And that's just such a key and important thing for a church to prepare themselves to have these interns.
Yeah.
And so I would say last two questions. What do you think would be one thing a church with an existing youth ministry internship program could do to maybe enhance it, to take it to the next level? If there's one thing that you would say is really important to do.
Well, when you use the word learning, that's the thing to keep in front of them, to go, how do we make this a learning experience?
Okay.
When I was at a church long ago in Colorado Springs, we had an intern program. It was a year-long, post-college, And that was also the headquarters of a lot of Christian organizations, and a number of those people went to my church. And the person who was the academic chief officer for Young Life, Fuller Seminary, they had all these classes. they got involved in our intern program, and they did a once a month kind of like a theological, class. And so, I mean, it was something I could not do, but it was so enriching for these interns because they were not just getting like how to plan games for junior high or put a retreat together.
Right.
They were also looking at, they were reading some serious theology before they went to seminary, and then debriefing with someone who really knew what they're talking about. Now, I couldn't even have led those things, but someone else did. But the key thing was the idea that they are learning something, not just practical ministry.
Right.
So I think to be able to go, what would help them to not just be learning the skills and techniques of ministry, a place to put it into practice, but also to learn the bigger concepts. In other words, one of the frustrating things for a young intern is the first time they have a run-in with a parent. I've had students come in and say, I'm changing my major. Like this mom, she just dumped on me, and I can't even sleep. I'm so mad. And well, they're young. Again, they don't have thick skin yet.
Right.
Part of youth ministry is parent concerns, criticism. You have to learn how you deal with those things. But you don't want to just learn that by getting thrust in a place where some parent dumps on you. You also want to have a chance to have looked at it theologically, to learn a little bit about what's the role of family and parents in ministry, so that you're a student realizing, oh, that's right, the parents have a lot of spiritual responsibility for their kids.
Yes.
That's what I believe. I know that's true. Now I can listen to their criticisms better, because it's not just about me and my little program I'm trying to run.
Right.
It's about the big picture of the church and what is this about. So I like that learning community phrase. That's good.
Okay.
That's a good place to start.
Well, Darrell, we thank you for your time, and this has been Directions in Youth Ministry video update. You guys have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, John.